like that. Just have to be very careful what we say.
We don't mess around. With Randy at the helm,
Yeah, right.
there's no time for sergeants.
There we go. Ooh. Nora entered the waiting room.
Oh, okay, I'll let her in.
For Nora. Nora Alice in the night.
3291.
She has seen Aurora. Two people have entered the waiting room.
Yeah. Now they're in.
John, oh, there we go. Very good.
They might be able to hear you.
Yeah, they can hear you.
Yeah.
They should be able to.
And another thing.
What's it all about? Okay. We'll start with that one.
Yeah, we got a few. Oh, we got a few minutes. You know any kind of battlefield jokes from Revolutionary War battlefields? Come on, Ed, you're good for a joke.
Battlefield jokes.
Battlefield jokes.
These two heshes were marching across the field.
Ah, yeah. Oh, it's almost like
First
a
one
limerick.
said.
One was munching on some sauerkraut. The other one was munching on his beard.
The other one's beard.
Right.
Yeah, it does
They
sound.
were brothers.
It sounds like poetic.
Is that an actual picture taken in South Brunswick?
Technically no.
Uh-huh.
That's the Kingston graveyard, but it's like 10 feet away from South Brunswick.
Hi, come on in.
Okay,
Unfortunately,
The
all our
audience is
flat
here.
area is in Franklin.
How are you?
Yeah.
We wanted to make sure.
All right, here comes some raw recruits now
Yeah, no,
for
we're
the
not.
Battle of Monmouth.
No, we've been to the Battle of Monmouth.
Oh, you're
Been there, done
veterans.
that.
Yes, we've been there.
Veterans, okay.
Right.
So you're reviewing the scene.
Well, we took an adult school course a couple of years ago, offered by the guy whose name I forgot. He's head of the Monmouth battlefield.
Uh-huh.
So we learned about that. And then Donna and I did a presentation in our community about, from what we remember.
Oh, cool.
from that. So I always thought, you can always learn something else.
Experts in the field.
Just interested. Interested makes the big difference. When you're interested and you want to learn.
Oh, yeah,
It's-
sure.
Oh, yeah.
You just want to soak up as much as you can. Actually, a couple weeks ago, we went to the Drake House in Plainfield for our very first time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we went up to the Plainfield Country Club. We snuck in.
Oh yeah.
All the way up to see
Nice.
where the battle,
Being recorded.
to see what,
Yeah, you're off mic now. So it's-
are we being recorded? Yeah.
Well, I think it's yeah.
Whatever.
We're not saying anything. So I think scandals. So yeah, I guess well, it's just barely 6:30, so you might want to wait a couple. We got a couple in the audience, and we have us here. So
Yeah.
Why don't we talk to the audience and,
Yeah, it's, audience,
Ask
do you
them
have
if
any
they-
questions?
yeah,
You have any
sure.
questions
Can
for
you
Charlie?
well, you know, like curiosity, any questions for opening remarks or something?
We got other people, Tony.
Yeah, I just let somebody else in.
Yeah, give them a chance to ask the question before we start.
Barney.
Yeah, let's do that.
What are they curious
Let's
about?
see what's going on here.
What do you want us to cover? Generally, what do you want?
Here we go. Here's
Yeah,
the
there's
first
more.
one.
There we go.
Hey, come on in.
Hey.
There's some sunshine,
Maxwell.
Patriots. Hello, Mr. Luck.
Greetings. And how are you, sir?
Luck is with us. Tonight.
How you doing, sir?
Washington's march through South Brunswick on the way to the Battle of Fort Monmouth.
You know, I don't know. Randy.
I was, I had an
Unshare?
interesting
Yeah, unshare.
conversation in Rockingham.
Sure, you
Yeah.
mean the screen?
Yeah, John scored the show.
A lady comes out, Lisa. I don't know. if
Okay,
you
she's
know
the
her.
curator.
Okay, well, I hit her with doing research for my fourth.
Did that anyway.
Yeah, you can see it once.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
She jumped.
Got a
on
whole
me.
slew of people
Really?
there.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
we got-
you better
we got-
put a disclaimer on
You
it.
need to ask if you can get up.
Expensive.
Two
And I
people on the-
know that they
Yeah,
don't
we have
want a
10
negative thing
it's
about
gonna be
it
weird.
suicide, but
Right.
it's documented that it was a suicide. The thing that I was
Right
doing.
after he signed his will.
Yeah, right, right, and what I was doing is trying to find the
Well,
exact location.
you can
where they
you can
jumped
see
into
them.
the river.
If,
Which is a
on
little
them,
more
they talk.
difficult,
It
because
just shows up like that right there. It's like, hey, that's how they show, like with the
I
zoom.
don't know if we have time,
But
one of the things is there's a
but yeah, you know
rock
what though,
out
we could
A
go.
moment ago, we could see the whole, we could see our
struts
whole
out
room
into
here.
the river.
Yeah, if you take the screen down, yeah.
Like the one
Yeah,
down to
screen.
the
But then
bridge.
they're not, you know, they can't see what we're
Have you
doing.
familiar
I,
with that
I'm
road?
familiar with.
Do the locals?
Yeah, I
That's
could
right.
stop sharing. If you want to just start, I see what you're saying. So you want to go,
Not that I'm aware.
you want to go in the
I was
beginning,
thinking
just
of getting
have
an
no
Indian
screens, just so we can.
You know, because
We
it
could
would be
talk, right?
a good
Right.
spot.
Okay, all right, I'll do
for
that.
Indians to, you know, watch the river or council.
Whatever.
Hold on.
And the other thing is, there's a mowed area off of, the road coming out. of
Okay, so there's
Kingston
everybody.
There we go.
Coming down to the bridge. There's a mowed area across from.
Oh, it's
the
Christina.
quarry.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no marker or anything, but it's lawn. It cuts
There we go.
into the woods and then there's a little circle there. And I'm wondering, is that what they think might be the location of the burying house, the first one? Because why would they mow that area?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I
It's
don't
not, they're
know.
doing that dumping there.
Right.
Those are two unanswered questions
Questions
I
that you're
have.
trying to figure out.
So if you hear anything, if you find out anything, I appreciate
I will
it.
do that.
Thanks a
Yeah.
lot.
I'm surprised that she's that defensive about.
Oh, boy, and I had my granddaughter with me and her boyfriend, they were helping me out. And we found the trail and we walked and everything
Right.
like that. But, I didn't want to go in the house anyway. So I was asking some questions about it in the house, but then she calmed down a little bit. And I gave her a copy of the book for the DAR, that I had published. So,
So
we
we'll
ended
start.
better
We'll start in a few
than we
minutes. So
started.
we'll take questions.
Yeah.
So we'll start.
Is this, am I gonna be?
No, go right ahead. No problem.
So, welcome everybody out there. We have a guest speaker tonight, Charlie Dieterich from the Kingston Historical Society. He's going to be talking about reconstructing the road to Monmouth. So, first of all, does anybody have any questions for him or for any of us before we start? Hi.
Greetings. Good evening,
Good evening.
loyal sons of liberty and daughters.
Okay, go.
Are you asking the people? on
Yeah, I
there?
did. So I haven't heard anything, but if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. I'll try to get to them. It's not like a normal Zoom Zoom settings. I'll look at it and see if I can. Then ask Charlie, during an intermission or something.
Thank you.
And if we don't hear from anybody on the screen, is there anybody live here that has a preliminary question, something you're curious about? The road to Monmouth or the Battle of Monmouth, so that we make sure we cover it. Is there anything that that's been bothering you? You've been losing sleep.
It's
all these
terrible.
years.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I think we're all
Did
set.
George Washington throw any silver dollars across any local rivers or streams in South Brunswick?
Turns out that
Lawrence
the
Brook.
silver dollars were not readily
Yeah,
available,
right.
but other type of coinage was thrown.
Good answer. Good answer.
So, that's good we waited. We
Ooh,
got
look at- here go
more people coming in. So I'll start mirroring this. Hold on a second.
Okay, just. Oh, Steve Barclay. What year did it take place? The battle, it's the same year as the Battle
This
of
is a
Monmouth.
good turnout.
1778.
We've been doing fairly well.
But though the talk actually, it all took place from 1999 to 2003. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. The process, not necessarily the battle itself, because I don't know much about the battle itself. So you'll be amazed how much stuff I don't know. You can write a book about it. In fact,
There
Ed
you
probably
go.
has.
It's
It probably
my
has.
fifth mystery. What Charlie doesn't know.
Yeah, oh, man, you couldn't lift it, I don't think. That's kind of heavy.
Bigger than Webster's.
Okay. Phew. Okay. So,
Oh,
folks are chatting in the background, so
Yeah, don't let that disturb you. You just have to.
I just have to
Move
go
on,
anyway.
move
Okay,
on,
they'll-
yeah.
I can mute all, and then
Yeah,
it's
mute-
I'm
mute.
gonna
you can
mute
unmute
everybody.
if you have a question, but
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
them all a mute initially, and we're good. Anyway, so the scoop is that many a year ago, well, actually in Kingston, we had a celebration in 1999, and it worked really well. And we started to learn about the village, which we really didn't know what was going on with the village, to the side with the exception of George, who knew all things. But we started to learn different things, and I ended up getting interested in the connection between Kingston and the Battle of Monmouth, because nobody taught me that one before. And so I'm going to talk about the New Jersey route of the Continental Army across New Jersey. So next, I have to do a beep thing, don't I? Beep.
There we go.
Anyway, so basically, I'm not going to try to talk about the right answers of things, but rather this is what we did as far as I can recall. It's been good 20 years, so so that's what we got next. So anyway, as I said, starting the autumn of 1999, after we did a Kingston thing, and all I knew was that the baggage was left in Kingston before the Battle of Monmouth. Bruce Bonner, okay. Next, and the more I asked, the more I realized that people there was no local knowledge of history. So I had an idea. Crazy idea. Honestly, B. Okay. So I wanted to start an awareness. Hello, all these people. An awareness campaign to celebrate communities from Camden and Hunterdon or Monmouth counties and everywhere in between, as a prelude to the 200th anniversary of the Battle of Monmouth. Happened on June 28th, 2003. Hit that beat. Anyway, here's the sections of the talk. Oh, look who that is. Anyway, it's my picture. Walking in front of the Kingston Cemetery. Next, I'm kind of zipping through these things. The problem is that a typical history of the Battle of Monmouth says General Washington crossed the river and maybe says that he went all the way to Hopewell. And then when he arrived in Monmouth Courthouse,
Yeah, they skip it.
it's like, what happened between those times? So I actually went through a bunch of different books, and a couple of them are better than this, but a lot of them are really sketchy about what happened in between. Next. And here's one that's this is a book on Lafayette, and it actually has a sort of a map. Unfortunately, the print of the book has a fold in the map. Anyway, let's go on that. It actually mentions Cranbury and things like that. Next. But it does show a few important things, which is Valley Forge to Doylestown, eventually to Hopewell. That says There's the ferry in between there, Rocky Hill, Kingston, and on. A pretty simple drawing. I'm not sure the author knew exactly what was going on because there just wasn't a whole lot of literature laying around. Next. And here's the Crossroads of the American Revolution in New Jersey Special Resource Study, National Heritage Area Feasibility Study, Environmental Assessment 2002, the Road to Monmouth. And it shows a beautiful dotted line going from Valley Forge to Princeton to the Battle of Monmouth, which is nice, except that the Army didn't go through Princeton and they did not cross at Washington Crossing in spite of the fact that the name is Washington Crossing. And so it's just sort of wrong.
Definitely.
But there it was, an official study resource thing for a national heritage area. Oddly enough, the heritage area didn't include Kingston or Rocky Hill. I think it may have included Hopewell, but there we go. Maybe not Lambertville. Who knows? Let's go on. So the basic problem that Washington had was that he had 13,000 men, cannons, and baggage. And I spelled all those right. And it was really hot and there were heavy thunderstorms and he had to get them to wherever the British were going to be. And he couldn't go across swamps because it's not winter time. You could do that after the Battle of Trenton, but you couldn't do it now because the swamps were melted. It couldn't be too steep. And how many of you have ever been down Route 518 going into Lambertville? And have noticed that you cannot carry a cannon up that hill. Sorry. It has to be well hidden from spies, perhaps. And there has to be drinking water. That's one of the interesting realizations that I had, was that there always has to be some place for the troops because it's 100 degrees out there marching along. And the horses well, probably the horses more important than the troops. But anyway, so let's review the history.
Next.
Anyway, the British are occupying Philadelphia, and the British and the Hessians are heading, they think, to New York, but how? As you can see, there are several different ways. You could go through Princeton if you really wanted to. You could do all sorts of other things. You could go along the old, was it the old New York? Goes through Allentown, or you could go farther east. Doesn't know how they're going to go. He just knows that they're leaving town and they're taking a whole bunch of baggage. Next. So Washington wants to protect his flank, so he goes farther north than Trenton to go across. And this is a British map from 1781, basically what they knew of the whole area. And it's only of northern New Jersey, so there's nothing, there's a big blank space where Cranbury and Monmouth Junction, for that matter, are supposed to be. Next. Here's the Smith's Mountains is really good for hiding behind. So Coriolis Ferry is over on the left. Baptist Meeting is another name for Hopewell. Rocky Hill is underneath the word Rocky, big word Rocky Hill. And Kingstown is Kingston. So that's how you go above the mountains or north of the mountains. And then from Kingston on, you have the Millstone River and all the swampiness that is West Windsor and Plainsboro, protecting you from the British suddenly coming in from the south. Next. And I figured I had a nice picture of Ridge Road. So Ridge Road is excellent. Holy cow, you can get east really easily. There's a reason that the Native Americans decided to use it, because it works well. It's straight, it's high, it's dry, and it goes from the blackish area on the left is the Heathcote Brook swampy area. And on the east, the really dark stuff is the Lawrence Brook swampy area. And in between, it's sort of high and dry, and it works pretty well. There's a little bit of swampy area in the middle at the top, and you don't go that way. So anyway, it's a good road. And when they said, we can go that way, so I said, sure, that's the way to go east. Next, the Long Bridge. And Ed, I'm sure, can answer this question. We'll get to it later. But where the heck is the Long Bridge? Ridge Road comes in, makes a beautiful right angle bend and another beautiful right angle bend and then another bend and another bend, and eventually goes over the railroad tracks, which didn't exist, of course. And sort of underneath where the square is, it says Marcy. There's the old Ridge Road is there. Maybe that's where it crossed. The question is how much of Lawrence Brook did you need to have a bridge for? Obviously, it was a long bridge. We know that much. But how long was the long bridge? And I don't have the answer for that, but that's good for another talk. So on to the next thing.
Well, you could sort of get an estimate because back in those days, a long ridge would be rather short today.
Yeah.
But the thing is, either gonna make it out of stone or wood.
Yeah.
And probably for a road that remote from the main road, which would be the King's Highway, it would be, I would say, 20 to 40 feet at the longest.
Okay. Well, it could
And
also
it would be wood. It
Yeah.
would be wood.
So Long Bridge. Well, it doesn't show up on this map. This is a map that from Rumsey's map collection, and you can see that Middlesex and Somerset County go all the way down through Kingston and Princeton. But it does show coming in. It says BIA at the very corner of that. That's the end of Columbia, which is another name for Hopewell. Going to Rocky Hill, going down to Kingston, and then maybe down to Plainsboro and Cranbury. Wouldn't that be great? No. Or going from Kingston over to the crossroads, which is Dayton, and then down through Prospect Plains to Cranberry. Note the spelling. Also, though it says Malalpan there in the various documents we've got, it's called Penlopen. And there's one place called Icetown. It's kind of impressive. It would be a great name for a brewery if anybody wants to start a brewery in Hightstown. Just call it Icetown Brewery. Next. So anyway, so I wrote a letter to the 225th Anniversary Commission saying that I had made up these signs, the Continental Army, route of the Continental Army thing, and had I'd given away to people along 518 and 603 and all sorts of roads all the way to Cranberry and Monroe. And I thought that was a good way to celebrate the reality of the road to Monmouth, was to just have people put them in their front yards. So that's the beginning of this letter. It goes on and on. I talk a lot. Yeah. Okay. So I think that we needed to have a study group to figure out about a mobilization, and that we should have people from all sorts of different constituencies all that talk together about it all, and possible participants' routes to cover, both the British and the Continental Army, and their various alternative ways that they went. And the next one is more interesting, and I really sound silly by that one. Next. People keep appearing. Okay, so I wanted 10,000 people to walk across New Jersey from Lambertville to Monmouth in the last week of June 2003, and I wanted to march for understanding, not for Coca-Cola or Budweiser, understanding the past and what it was like to walk 40 miles across the state, and other people to help them feed them and things like that. How do you deal with a crowd like this? The best way to understand the American Revolution is to have a mobilization that's at all similar to it. What a great idea. War is big. This is our way to understand war. Next. Well, anyway, understanding humanity, the imperfection, because unlike the battles of Trenton and Princeton, everything didn't come off perfectly in the Monmouth campaign. In fact, it has a certain amount of cowardice to it and everything else. But we need to understand the imperfection, and also that New Jersey really is the crossroads of the American Revolution. Anyway, my idea was not a good one, so it didn't win. Next. So we ended up creating something called the Road to Monmouth Heritage Campaign, with three prongs: the battle itself, which they've been doing reenactments for years, Continental route, and British and Hessian route. And a fellow named Rich Walling, another guy, John Fabiano, and myself were co-organizers. John Fabiano was in Allentown. Rich was the president at the time of the Friends of Monmouth Battlefield. And we even got our own stationery. Talk about being good, huh? So there's a nice thing that we got at some point. Next. Anyway, trying to determine what the route really was, down to the footprints, was the thing I like to do. And I realized that, like, trained historians are really good at finding obscure reference material, but they don't know anything about the old name that Sarah's house used to be, place where Sarah's, but local, they don't know the local geography. So when they get words that don't make any sense, digging down to reality is difficult. Whereas local historical societies know just about everything about every square inch of their village or town, but they don't have the references that historians have, and they don't necessarily know how their truth and the neighboring truth relate to each other. So I figured that I'd get them all together and see what happens. Beep. So workshop number 1 in 2002 at Wetherell House. And the purpose was to share information about the route and facts, rumors, mysteries associated with the prelude to the Battle of Monmouth Courthouse, and also support the 225th celebration of the battle. And to limit it a little bit, main army column of the Continental Army. And there are other interesting sidelights with Lafayette, Morgan, Dickinson, and Lee, for that matter. Anyway, other people could do that later, but we want to just stick with that. Next. Here we go. So for workshop 1, we sort of said, what do we know? What do we not know? What are we unsure about? And what do we disagree about? And then talk about the possibilities, commemoration. And we ended up having a big pile of to-dos and mysteries and everything else. We had 2 more meetings scheduled, one in Hopewell, one in Englishtown. Next. It was a big group. Here's the list of attendees. And some of you may recognize a few of the names. Joan Luckhart and C.L. Leadham and Bob Craig and Bob Tucker and
Gambit.
Ellen Gambatees.
Scale Leadham.
So, and Peggy Carlson from Rockingham. So it was a really good crowd. And I guess Joan was hosting it, I think. Anyway, good thing. Next slide has more goodies. Anyway, one of the things that we came up with was something like, we came up with a whole slew of things, but the Bungtown Road was by far the most bizarre. There's Lambertville and the river. At the time, the online maps were, the Census Bureau was the only one that had one that wasn't copyrighted. And they were these strange sticky maps. So anyway.
So Bungtown Road Lambertville was called Bungtown at one point, yeah.
Could be, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
I
pretty
don't
sure.
know. Anyway, it has a bunch of different names. But anyway, so from the town going due east, 518 is the way everybody goes, and that's the curvy road that goes down, says Brunswick Pike on it. But that was too steep. And route, what is it, 576, 578, whatever that is, going up is a somewhat better road. It's still, as you will remember, it just sort of goes off into space from Lambertville. They're all steep things. It's kind of obnoxious. But one of the guys who lived there said there's this thing that existed that was called the Bungtown Road. And the place that has a little lake in it is actually the water supply authority for Lambertville. And we all, I think, trespassed down to the water supply land and followed this little dirt path that went through the woods and go, well, that, you know, it's just somebody made a path there. We found a stone bridge in the middle of it.
Wow.
Whoa, that's a nice old thing. And more research was done later, and they discovered, yeah, that's indeed, there was a road that connected there to Rock Road. And I think there's another pic. The next one may have some more details on that. Let's see.
Yeah, Rockville,
Yeah.
yeah.
Rock Road. Anyway, actually, that's gone too far. We've gone too far east, but that's okay.
Back up.
Yeah, you may as well. But there we go. Anyway, it turned out the Rock Road was basically along the edge of Dr. Cox's properties, which was the edge of Hopewell and Amwell. And anyway, we started learning about that. Oh, that's kind of cool. Now we can go on east. The next big thing was how'd they get to Hopewell? How'd they get to the Baptist Meeting House? And next slide forward. It turns out that somebody named McHenry in their diary says the Army takes the road from the Stone Schoolhouse to Rocky Hill. Halt near Sourland Highlands, Hopewell. They actually spent 2 days in Hopewell. 4 miles from Princetown, Rocky Hill reconnoitered a good position relative to Kingston in case that should be the enemy's route. Indeed, they didn't know where the British were going. They kept sending people out to try to reconnoiter them and steal all of the ropes from the wells so that they couldn't get water.
Huh.
Because this was hot. They had people dying.
Huh.
Anyway, it turned out that Marshall's Corner, which is on the USGS map there, has an old stone schoolhouse building, and the stone schoolhouse is indeed. Oh, you're in the way. Here we go. We discerned that it was the south route. Somebody who was in our meetings had also written a book about how the path was actually up towards Ringo's because there was a schoolhouse up there. It was like he had to add a note at the end of the book when it was printed because it's already all typeset.
Is this Stone's schoolhouse? It's Marshall's Corner. You said it was near, right?
Yeah,
It's still there.
Pennytown, yeah.
Yeah, that stone house. I see it. There's a small. It looks like a schoolhouse there, right on it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna build any more of those. So,
Wait, is it still on 518?
so it's on 518 Spur. You remember that used to be, it's now 6 something or other.
Oh.
Goes from Marshall's Corner up to Hopewell, and while the main road goes, the main 518 goes nicely straight west,
Right.
and the Army should have used that, but the problem was that it goes up a very steep hill and down a very steep hill to Bird Avenue and stuff. That would have been deadly for the horses.
That is steep.
Yeah.
So it's deadly for me too. So anyway, but the good news is that the other one is kind of mild, just mild enough that you can get cannons up there.
Yeah.
So I now, whenever I drive around New Jersey, I say, if I'm invading, well, is this a good road to invade on or not? Anyway, but it's fairly level going all the way over to Rocky Hill, and there's a crossing of a stream that's Washington Well, it's called. It wasn't called that at the time. Anyway, next. So then we had workshop 2. And John Henchak was the guy in Lambertville, and he was full of all sorts of exciting little information about the receipts for various different taverns for the at Corriales Ferry and who took Continental Army cash and went bankrupt and who didn't, things like that. Really fascinating. The second group had a bunch of different folks, Betty Wagner from Cranbury and Jeanette Mooser and Joan again, and lots of good folks. Stacy Roth, who does Molly Pitcher, I think. Anyway, the zigzag line on the other side is the Cox line, which is the line between the counties now, which is anyway. But one interesting thing down the bottom, it says Washington staff stopped in Rocky Hill at Rockingham for tea at Mrs. Berrien's. So one of the big things in the story of Rockingham was that that the Continental Congress found a place for Washington to go, and there wasn't anything available in Princeton, so they had to go off into the hinterland someplace. But it turns out Washington knew Mrs. Berrien, which sort of changes the story around a little bit. And tea and pleasant conversation, it says.
She was a widow at this time.
Yes, she was. There's a whole Berrien story, which we'll not go into.
I'm trying to.
But it's kind of interesting to know that. And we did a GIS overlay of some maps made by Erskine to try to understand where roads really were and things like that. It was a really wonderful group. And by this time, I realized that I was not going to lead it. I was just going to call the meetings, and all these folks were going to come up with really clever insights on the route.
One thing you might want to mention, Charlie,
Yeah.
with Rockingham, and I was checking it out this weekend, where Rockingham is now is the fourth place that they placed that mansion. The first place, and I still think there's some speculation about it, but there's a little, when you cross the Rocky Hill, all over the millstone, and you're starting to go up that hill, they say that where the 40-mile-per-hour sign is on your right, if you look over into the quarry land, and you can't because of the foliage and all that, is where the Berrien house was initially. With, I think it's Peter Berrien was up the road. And we're talking about Old Georgetown Road because 518 didn't exist then. So if you can imagine going up that hill just a little bit and then looking to your right towards where the quarry is, that's where the original Rockingham was. Okay? Because I don't want you to get confused and say, oh, the Rockingham where it is now, well, that must be where Washington stayed for tea. No, and that's not where he stayed for his time there in 1780.
I tell people that it's there, but it's 200 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
Probably in mind. Yeah. And we can go on to the next one.
Okay. This looks like they're stuck on, it looks like screen 2. It says States Workshop 2 slide. So I don't know if there's a lag time or not, but I had no idea of how that would fix that because it's, it syncs up. So I'm not sure. So just let's ask real quick. So everybody out there, what can you see? What do you see up on your screen right now? Can you
Unmute and tell us.
Just change to
Change
workshop
workshop
3.
three.
Okay.
Workshop 3, June 15, 2002.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent.
guys.
Right.
He says
Okay,
I just
we're on
you
target.
guys.
Oh, some people are seeing. Hi, Christina.
So-
Okay.
So
Good.
some people don't
We're
see
about as
it.
well organized.
That's-
that's
as
strange.
Troops.
Well, other people see this though. It's very strange.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I've done that.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Okay.
Hooray!
All right.
Fun. So let's see, where am I? Okay, the third session, those were our goals, to talk about colonial roads instead of the more modern ones. And by this time, the third session was in the Village Inn in Englishtown. And that was great. They hosted us and it was really fun. You got to see various different historic sites just in the process of learning about this. And the other thing was that we started looking for surviving historic resources along the route. And then also on the other side, we're planning how to commemorate the 225th and how to mark the route and heritage tourism, which was always a good question. So this is a picture of, dear me, it's now Monroe Township and Manalapan Brook, which was called Penlapen in the thing. Concordia was not there at the time. What's interesting is that there's sort of two roads that come east from Cranbury. There's Prospect Plains Road and there's I think it's called Cranberry Station Road, which you would figure, no, that wouldn't exist because there's no station to go to. But somehow they get you over across the brook and to Hoffman Road, which used to be the main road, not named after the guy from the 1930s, but Hoffman Road was the road going into Englishtown, and then the Jamesburg Englishtown Road was a early 18th century road, maybe. I'm not sure. Next. So anyway, I have 69 pages worth of this stuff available if anybody is interested. What happened was that I made a whole web set so that you could go from one day to the next by clicking tomorrow and everything else. And then I had the stuff on all the workshops. Workshop 3, we took notes, but I have no idea where the notes went. So unfortunately, we don't have any of the outcome there. But by then, we were sort of going, okay, let's get moving. And they started doing things. So anyway, if you're interested, that's on the Historical Society archive website. And let's see, everybody who's had chance to check out the QR code has done that. On we go to the next thing. A page looks like this. So on the 25th, Washington's going to Rocky Hill and then Kingston and then to Longbridge. And then just things from the works of Washington from a Greenman who was one of the soldiers, Dr. Adams, another one. And each one of them talks about what's going on and where they've gone. Basically, they come to Kingston fairly early in the day because Washington has breakfast at Mrs. Berrien's. And then they get to Kingston and then they just wait until nightfall because it's so ungodly hot. And they didn't say anything about big thunderstorms, so it probably wasn't because other places they said thunderstorms. Fair and hot, Dr. Adams, there we go. And then at sunset, they march to the place called Longbridge. And some more folks went forward with Lafayette. And you don't know who he stayed with because he never filled in the name. And so that was the sort of stuff we were working on. There's a expense account as well that says strange little things about who it was who they owe money to. So that's one of the best ways we could find out what was going on. What do we got next? Boop. Okay. So anyway, finally the Road to Monmouth Battlefield project ended with everybody being enlightened and a way of advocating better for a coherent celebration. On the 225th, we already looked at the Bungtown Road and the Stone Schoolhouse on Mrs. Berrien, but there are a couple more mysteries. Next. I'm rolling through this, aren't I? Okay, so here's what McHenry says. Cross the Millstone by a bridge and halt at Kingston, breakfast at Mrs. Berrien's, good tea and agreeable conversation. And so I'm imagining that here they are stuck in Kingston all day. One of the good things about stopping in a village is that they have wells, because if you drink river water, you're gonna die. So instead, you want to drink out of a well. And Kingston had enough wells. Rocky Hill probably has some wells. The Washington Well Farm apparently.
There was probably some booze available also.
Well, that's the other thing is Kingston.
And then they're supposed to get a rum ration in the morning,
Yeah.
all the troops. They usually had a wagon carrying the rum.
Maybe.
And they would get, I'm pretty sure they had that. And in the morning, they'd get their pinch of rum.
Okay.
It was watered down. But that was the kicker to get them going.
That sounds good. Anyway, they got to spend the whole day. I assume that, one of the good things about having both the Heathcote Brook there and the Millstone River is that you can wash out your clothes and stuff. Mm-hmm. Generally get refreshed. You've been marching at 100-degree temperatures for a number of days.
How many people were part of this movement you can think of? I mean, how many people, I came in late, I'm sorry.
Okay.
How many people are actually part of this movement across?
So it's at least 10,000 at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, Lafayette took some off. and
Right.
Whatever else.
So
Right.
everyone converging onto the little town of Kingston and Queenston and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that's a lot of people to show up at once.
Yeah, well, we have nice hills, we have a nice
Right.
river to consider, all that stuff.
Foraging the food stuff is gonna be,
Well, I don't know.
could have been an issue.
They did come straight from Valley Forge, and they may very well, they said they cooked for 3 days all the
Okay.
time, so. They had 2 days in Hopewell, and no doubt that was provisioning.
Okay.
One of them was provisioning. I don't know where they got the
That's a lot
stuff,
of foraging, that's a lot.
but it was, anyway.
Yeah, Charlie, let me clarify on the numbers. You have to be careful with the numbers during the Revolutionary War. If you look at the sources, there's a variety of how many troops the British had. Remember, with the British, they're carrying or going with a lot of civilians out of Philadelphia who were Tories, and they wanted to get out of there.
Sure.
And you're talking about at least 1,000. And whether you count those as fighting people or not, that's open to debate, because there were a lot of civilians that were not in fighting shape and they couldn't participate. That's a problem on that side, because the British outnumbered the Americans in the Battle of Monmouth. Okay, so the numbers were on the side of the British. But the thing that to keep in mind, the numbers that were in Kingston, when sending Lafayette ahead, there were many men who went with him. So that the numbers that we're quoting,
Yeah,
probably there was less, and I'm estimating going on Longbridge Road, 6,000 to 7,000 in one mass.
okay, but there were two trips, right?
Right. And
And I think Lafayette took approximately 4,000.
yeah,
Kingston
Yeah,
with
so it was,
yeah, and it's good you use the word approximate, because the records back in those days were woefully inadequate.
okay.
And I'm just saying, be careful with the numbers.
It's not 2,000 though. It's
Right,
it's bigger than that.
right.
It's bigger than
Yeah,
that.
it was a sizable army,
a lot more
Yeah.
than went.
but
retreated
let's
through
not
New
get
Jersey
too emotional.
earlier.
You know, let's be careful with the numbers.
I'm working on a project for the Princeton Battlefield Society, and I learned something through my stuff that, because I'm trying to find the African Americans, but the kicker is there could be African Americans there, but they were the servants or slaves of the soldiers, so they would not be figured into the actual fighting force.
Right.
So I could actually add on to the amount of people
Well,
that
that's
are in
interesting.
there.
Okay.
So I did not know that. Here I am trying to find people. I found 20 African Americans for 10 crucial days. Yay. But it could be more, but they would not be figured into
Okay.
the actual fighting force because they were
They were helpers. They
weren't even.
they were
they're-
coming along with it.
And some
Yeah.
African Americans were listed on enrollments of troops as Native
Yes.
Americans.
Uh-huh.
So they
that's
could be
true.
accepted too. So that's another thing.
That's another thing. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just
So-
too much fun.
So Lawrence is said to be 4 miles from Kingston. I'm not sure what Lawrence means, since whether it's
Henry Lawrence? No.
don't know. Anyway,
Lawrence is the
Lawrence what?
Longbridge Farm.
okay,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay. Next.
Lorenz is Lawrence. The
it's-
the
they didn't
spelling
know
in
it's
those
spelling.
days was
That's-
just as good as the
Standard.
counting of the number of troops.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
it's
back to that now.
standardized.
Okay.
Horrible.
Next. So, someone had said that what Thomas Wetherell had hosted General Washington on the 25th, and we know that Thomas Wetherell had Longbridge and sold a bay. A horse, I guess, in 1770. What day was that? What year was that? 1778. So, anyway,
I can clarify.
I'm sure you can. But what's interesting is that at the time, that's what we came up with. And the
Okay.
good news is that you probably figured out something that's more true. But anyway, this was the sort of stuff that was coming up. Is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Thomas Wetherell was the manager of the Longbridge Farm when the Lawrence family was not there.
Okay,
Lawrence family was basically in Philadelphia most of the time and used Longbridge Farm as a summer place.
oh, okay,
So Thomas Wetherell was in charge for most of the year. And he ran the Wetherell Tavern, which is where Wawa is now,
oh,
on George's Road.
okay,
And when General Washington pays Thomas Wetherell for his services and so forth, it's at that site, George's Road, which is down the road from the Longbridge Farm. The thing that you might want to question is, where did Washington spend the night? He might have spent it in the Wetherell Tavern.
That's true.
Okay, but we don't have any confirmation of that. I can't see whether, well, or he could be in the farmhouse, Longbridge Farmhouse, and we don't know exactly where that is. We have an idea, but we don't know exactly where.
it's kind of fun that we got all these things that are still mysteries, and then,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
we were starting very low and got up to that level 25 years ago.
And Bay Ridge, Richmond was the king stud horse at Longbridge Farm, because the Longbridge Farm was known for horse raising and purebreds and so forth. And Bay Richmond was the key. And an interesting part about that, people in the area hid Bay Richmond when the British were in the area, because that's how valuable Bay Richmond was. And so they would take it off a Longbridge Farm, hide it on somebody else's farm. And then when the British were, no longer in the area threatening, then they would bring Bay Richmond back to Longbridge Farm.
Okay, so it's a local.
Yeah, Bay Richmond is a legend that nobody
Legend,
knows
yes.
about.
Okay, or did at the time. Okay, next. There we go. So Dayton unfortunately gets cut off the map here, but we know that they went down to Cranbury, and the big question was, did they take the road that was north of the brook or south of the brook? And it seems that Lee's column went north and that Washington's column went south. That was as much as we could get. And then we said, okay, we don't know this stuff. We'll just let it go. What's interesting is Washington's column seems to go along a road, and then the road ends, and then you cross the brook where there's no road, and then it comes into Hoffman Road, which is the Wiggly Road over on the far side. And we went to that place and we looked, and sure enough, there was a field that looked nice and flat, as if there had once been a road, but I guess putting another road with a nice bridge up north of it, that one just fell into disuse. So that's a possibility. I don't know. The folks in Monroe were a little bit. They had a bunch of different ideas, and this was as close as they got. And then over in Englishtown, being another group, they didn't know what happened beyond the edges of Englishtown. So that represented a continuing mystery. It may well be solved by now, but that was a continuing mystery at the time. Next. So anyway, we made signs for each of the routes. The Continental Army routes were blue, and the British Army, I think, were red. I'm not exactly sure anymore because I didn't get one. And the older signs, the route of the Continental Army was there. The Road to Monmouth sign said 225th celebration. And let's see, I guess this may be where I talk about the bus tour. There was I think I handed these out, a bus tour of the Continental route and the British route, with a conference in the morning and then a bus tour in the afternoon, which was March of 2003. That's this guy. And there's some more here. Anyway, I'm not sure whether it actually happened or not, because I seem to remember going to this thing in the morning at least, and maybe it was I had work to do in the afternoon, but it's like, I don't remember any bus tour. Do you remember anything, George?
Wow. Was there?
Well, I
any
didn't do
rubber
much on the
bands?
British end of it, so.
Yeah.
But I don't remember
It
anything
may well
on
be
the
that they did the,
Continental Army side.
may it be that they only got sign-ups enough for the British route, and
I don't remember any Continental Army
Yeah,
bus route.
I don't, yeah, anyway, it was like the plans were there and plans fell through. That's the way it goes. Next. So here's an old map, an old USGS map showing for everything from Hopewell to how far did we get? Longbridge, and places where the source literature talks about the Army being there or Washington being there. So it's pretty nicely documented that no, they didn't go through Princeton, which was one of the major goals, to not let people think that just because the federal government published something was true. The other interesting thing is so this is an old enough map that I guess that underneath the word Monmouth Junction, there's the road, the old Georgetown Road goes up, and the route, what's now Route 518, goes down and then up. And there's sort of a flat way that you can go from a little bit up from the river. You can go basically southwest to get to the road that winds into Kingston. And that may very well have been close to where Rockingham was. I don't know. It's hard to do the research because there's no hill there anymore. So there we go.
But obviously the road was closer to the river, because if not, you would be up on the mountain.
Well, I think that actually there's there were the two old houses, that one of which is now gone. That
Which was the crossing from Rocky Hill in.
old Georgetown Road was where the crossing was to get into Rocky Hill. Then it goes up a little bit, and I think there may have been a branch off of that, because the road to the old Georgetown Road goes nicely steeply up, and there might have been a sort of a skirting road that goes up a little bit. Anyway, another small local detail that this project was full of. Next. Yeah, here was the tour thing. We had nice folks, New Jersey Historical Commission and the like, and Monmouth County Historical folks talking about the routes and the evacuation route, which was up to Sandy Hook, and supporting by all sorts of different groups that did this. It was great fun, but I don't remember being a tour guide. On the other hand, by this point, I was running on automatic because of just all these people and all this stuff. Next. So we also ended up having lots of different projects that had almost the same name. And the Battlefield Project, the Heritage Project, the Partnership. And we all were basically working towards the big celebration. Next. So this was the map that we gave the reenactors. Obviously more detailed, but you can see that the British and Hessians split up a whole bunch and reunited, like at Mount Holly, and anyway, they ended up having, the British route ended up having, there's one of the Quaker meeting houses, and I can't remember whether it's Evesham or what it was, but anyway, they had a battle in the grassy area around the meeting house, and there was a cannonball lodged in the brick meeting house, and it's still there. So the question was, would Quakers want to participate in a commemoration of a war? And it turned out that they said, sure, fine. And so we went in and they talked about Quakerism at the time, and because it has a history, they talked about the history of Quakerism. It was great fun. That was good. I ended up going to that. I did most of my stuff on the Continental route, of course, but I went down to do that. Next. What we got? Okay, so here's the corrected map from Doylestown over in green, showing the Army being very careful about going down. And I don't know, there's actually a correction to the British route, but I don't know it. So there we go. Next. 1 week before the event, I found an email It says, well, last night I wiped out with the Hopewell folks regarding the celebration on June the 22nd. The Secretary of State is walking from Woodsville on 518 to Hopewell that afternoon. The Old School Baptist Church is having a memorial service for Red War soldiers at 2 p.m. at the graveyard, and the graveyard will be open until 4 p.m. and then it will be shut. But the Secretary of State will arrive at 4:15, wanted to do a ceremony presentation. The Borough Council said that, okay, they could do it in the gazebo at 4:30. And the Hopewell business folks were going to have fireworks at dusk, but what was it? The folks further east were going to do fireworks also the same night, and it was like, oh my goodness, everybody's doing everything all at once. This is going. My brain is going to explode. But it all worked out, you know. Eventually, the sun set. All was good. So I ended up walking from Woodsville. There's a church on 518. We walked from there into Hopewell, along with George Washington and a number of other folks. Not a big crowd. It was not 10,000 people. I was very
You didn't make
disappointed.
that.
So much for that. Next. Here's one part where there were a whole bunch of folks. Secretary of State had a bunch of kids, teens, joining in, and there were horses back there, and there were horses up here. In Lambertville knew how to party. They had a community spaghetti dinner. The entire street was one long table, and they served hundreds of people
Wow.
spaghetti dinner. And then the next day, George Washington and the governors of New Jersey and Pennsylvania arrived in the same boat. It's kind of interesting. Anyway, and at least one night, I was putting up dragoons in my living room. I don't remember anything about that. My mind is a blank from the whole thing. Anyway, here's a typical picture of folks going along the road. Next. Here's a couple of folks in Kingston. And I also had a picture of the fire company color guard, but I figured only George would want to see that one. So, and there's the same flag and the teens still, the banner that said Road to Monmouth. And the Kingston Cemetery, which has various graves in it. Next. So the 21st was Lambertville's day, 22nd was Hopewell's, 23rd was Montgomery Township, Rocky Hill and Franklin. So, and two different municipalities. South Brunswick had all the 25th, and Cranbury had all the 26th. They had a huge parade down Main Street. It was really fantastic. 27th was Monroe Township, Manalapan Township, and Englishtown Borough, trying to keep them all straight, and their celebrations from not overlapping was odd. The British group had Gloucester City, Haddonfield, Evesham, Mount Holly, Black Horse, Columbus, Crosswicks, and Allentown, all one after another. It was great fun. And the weather was pretty much good. The living history community, reenactors were around for a lot of things. The Star Ledger had special section. They covered things daily, as did the Trenton Times. And what was great was that every town made up its own celebration. So South Brunswick was, I think it was Regular Park. I'm trying to remember anything, but
Yeah,
My brain-
regular park.
my brain is gone. I'm sorry. We did something in the Kingston schoolyard, and then there was something and I remember walking across Route 1 with however many people were left of this entourage thing. Next. Very nice brochure. It has a copy of two with the correct route. And I got it. And on one side it has the road to Monmouth, and on the flip side, click, is the Battle of Monmouth. So that was handed out, and it was good to have something that was a whole lot closer to being historically accurate for the 225th. Next, let's see where we're at now. Oh, and this was cool because I'm a ham radio operator, and what I wanted to do was something that was fun for me. So, I went to various different ham radio clubs and said, "Hey, do you want to be part of this thing?" And so I described simply what was going on. I say, "You want to be part of it?" And the next one says what we ended up doing. Okay, so what we did, we had these ham radio stations that were on for one day, and anybody in the world could contact them. And they, the idea was that they were celebrating the road to Monmouth, and also they were set up in the various different places around the route as if Washington had a ham radio station, and it was great fun. We had special call signs that we got just for the one day. There was W2H when Washington was at Hopewell. When Washington was at Rockingham was W2R, W2C for Cranbury, King to Gloucester, King to Hatfield, King to Evesham, and King to Crosswicks. Turns out W's and K's are the letters that all call signs have to start with anyway, and that was Washington and the King. So it was great fun. And people they just sat there and chatted with people on the radio. And most ham radio operators are pretty sedentary anyway, so that was the way for them to participate. Next. So the big question then is, they're gonna do it again.
2028.
And we have to be sure that they get the route right. And the other question is it gonna be a sort of a collaborative celebration? Is each town gonna be able to make up its own how they're going to do things, or is there going to be a consultant that says everybody's going to do it like this? And the big question is, what role will the South Brunswick Historical Society have? So that's the end of my slide. No, you have a couple more slides that you put in there.
Yeah, I just put some on the end talking about the Battle of Monmouth. Yeah.
So, interestingly enough, I had to do my disclaimer. These are 25-year-old remembrances, and facts often get lost in the process. John Fabiano, which was one of the co-chairs, has been working on this. He's giving a talk on June 10th at the Swan Historical Foundation on the British Army's march to Monmouth. So that's cool. I'm sure he's been working in history for the past 25 years, so I'm sure his presentation will be a lot nicer, though I have a better color scheme than he does. So that's
Where is
it.
that going to be?
I think it's Washington Crossing, is it?
Yeah.
Where's the library? The David
Well, it
Library?
was the
No,
David
not
Library,
was.
which doesn't exist, but the building is still there, and I don't know if the amphitheater is still.
I believe I was just down there on Sunday, and apparently they're still using the big theater
So it might
for
be
big
there.
events and stuff.
So look up
probably there.
SwanHistoricalFoundation.org.
I think that's where the round tables have always been done, both,
Okay.
especially the Revolutionary
Yeah,
War.
Okay.
it kind of looks like
I've never
a,
made it
kind
to
of like
them.
a church.
You've made it to them.
I've made a few, of them, yeah.
Luck.
Beautiful church. It's a beautiful building.
So that's that. And I had various brochures here for, like, one of these is for the this is just for the tour. This is where the celebrations are going to be. This is the bus tour, and this is the reenactor. What you can do as reenactors.
Have you looked at the book Fatal Sunday?
Hmm?
Have you looked at the book Fatal Sunday
No,
by Wheeler? It's
no.
all about the Battle of Monmouth.
Okay.
Just
I'm
like-
I have to admit that my excitement about the Battle of Monmouth is not as great as my excitement
Us
about
getting there.
understanding New Jersey and how the heck all
I'm
those
just saying
people
that
moved
because
around.
it's pretty intense.
And what was it, Fatal Sunday?
Fatal Sunday by Wheeler.
Okay, cool,
Last name Wheeler.
cool, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, is it my turn to get everybody excited about the battle?
Well, I just wanted to say, oh boy, we can't read this. Sorry about that.
Oh, my
It-
goodness.
That's okay, I can get it.
It looks bad. It looks better on the screen. They're having the reenactment, and it's going to be on June 15th, so you can actually attend there. And it says they had. Look, they had. Does that really say 11,000 visitors last year? So it was a big event. Yeah, it was a big event and it's happening again this year, and just wanted to point that out. So it's gonna be on Father's Day. Yeah,
Very
let's
cool.
see. And then there's a place here you can go if this link will work for
Ooh,
you.
get tickets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have technical difficulties here, but yeah, you can register for it on Eventbrite. You know, so if you just Google Battle of Monmouth City, you'll find all about it. But so let me go back to a more colorful screen here. So we have, I don't know,
Ooh.
it's a little bit better. So now Ed, now you wanted to talk, right, about the Battle of Monmouth, or what were you going to cover?
I always wanted to.
I know.
Surprise.
I'm chafing at the bit. Charlie, that was great.
thank
It
you.
was a
Yes,
good basic foundation for leading up to the Battle of Monmouth, you know, with all the painful steps that it took. I wanted to start off with an honor roll of the local heroes of the Battle of Monmouth. These are the definites, okay? And I know you want to take notes of all these names, but I'll have to go through it quickly. Jonathan Combs, James Gulick, John Johnson, William Scudder, Samuel Groves, Aaron Longstreet Jr., Andrew McDowell, Riscaric Moore, William Perrine, William Van Tilburg Jr., William Williamson, Henry Van Dyke, Peter Wyckoff, and John Kaywood. Now, William Bastido claimed that he was there, but we don't have any proof. And that would be the list of the ones that we know were at the Battle of Monmouth. Now, there's a little footnote to that. All those guys were way ahead of the troops that Charlie was talking about that marched on Long Bridge Road. They were ahead because they were militiamen who were harassing the British line trying to get to Monmouth Courthouse. So they were there early and doing a great job of pestering the British so that they were not in the best of shape when they were ready to fight this battle. Now, the question when I read, and I have a source which is rather interesting, this is from the Great Depression Works Progress group that wrote various things about the history in New Jersey. And I think you'll find it interesting. But the thing to keep in mind is who won this battle? And think of moral victory, actual victory, or what other kind of victory can you call this, if you can call it a victory? And then you got to break it down into whose goals were met. Okay, were Clinton's goals met, meaning the British side? Were Washington's goals met? Were Lee's goals met? These are the key players in this Battle of Monmouth. And of course, the ones that don't get their just due, I think, are Lafayette and Mad Anthony Wayne. And also the artillerymen, the ones who are pounding the British with their cannon. That was the actual thing that turned this battle the way it turned out. Okay, without further ado, Washington stopped over at Cranbury in Middlesex County on the 26th, and on the same day, because of unbearably hot weather, Clinton rested at Monmouth Courthouse, now freehold. His wagon train, 11 miles long, had taken 9 days to travel 60 miles. On the 27th, Washington moved to a point 3 miles west of Englishtown, and here instructed Lee to be ready to attack Clinton's army the following day. Before the British should reach a safer position in the Navesink Highlands. High ground is very important for any battle, especially back in those days. After midnight on the 28th, Alexander Hamilton rode to Lee's headquarters with written orders to attack. 0 hour was the moment the British caravan got underway. The plan was to have Lee distract Clinton so that Washington, with his main force of about 8,000 men, could crush the enemy's entire resistance. Therein lies the key goal for Washington. In other words, you win this battle, you might end this war. But erratic Lee that's a mild adjective for Lee, never began the action. About 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, June 28th, 1778, after several delays, he made contact with the enemy, only to fall back at once without even attempting to put up a fight. Washington, after breakfast at the home of Dr. English in Englishtown, rode toward Freehold. Word of Lee's retreat reached him at the outskirts of the village. Boy, was he mad. That was mine. Spurring his horse along the sandy road in the broiling sun, he sent 2 of Lee's retreating regiments into the woods, where they would not be seen by his oncoming troops. You got to keep in mind what the question is, why did he do that? And immediately dispatched 2 of his own regiments to check the British until he could arrange for the main army in the battle formation. At this hectic moment, General Lee, proud of his retreat over difficult terrain and believing that his splendid military judgment had saved his force from destruction, rode directly up to Washington. Rarely known to utter a profane word, Washington cursed Lee roundly that day. Imagine what the words were. One general claimed that the commander swore till the leaves shook on the trees like an angel from heaven. Lee himself later wrote, I was disconcerted, astonished, and confounded by the words and manner in which His Excellency accosted me. But Washington had no time to argue with Lee. He ordered Lee's weary regiments to retire to Englishtown and threw the main army against Clinton's advancing troops. All day the fighting raged, with Anthony Wayne, Mad Anthony Wayne, Baron von Steuben, and the legendary lady known as Molly Pitcher acquitting themselves nobly, also Lafayette. The heat was infernal. Soldiers on both sides died of sunstroke. Washington's beautiful white horse, worn out from the heat and constant running, sank beneath the weight of his master and never rose again. The controversy there is, was he really on a white horse? Leaping to another horse, brought by his Negro servant, that would be Billy, the commander dashed on to direct events in another part of the field. In late afternoon, Clinton withdrew, and Washington formed new lines to continue the attack. But night made it impossible to press the advantage, and by daylight, the British were well on their way to Sandy Hook, where they embarked for New York City. The Battle of Monmouth, longest engagement of the entire war, demonstrated that the Continental Army could drive back the British regulars, raised Washington's prestige, and defeated the secret attempts of General Gates and his congressional supporters to have the commander removed. So this was a big deal. On July 4th at New Brunswick, while the second anniversary of the Declaration of Independence was being celebrated, Lee's court-martial began. Okay, now that's a lot of history in that reading. And I tried to make it exciting to you so that you would get the feel of how important this battle was. It's not a clear victory for either side. But the thing is, Clinton did achieve his goal. It was at a cost, but he achieved his goal. He got from Philadelphia across to New York. Washington did not achieve his goal, but he achieved an awful lot. And there's one thing in the Revolutionary War that you could count on from the American side. You don't have to win the battle, you just have to win the war. And you got to keep in mind that Washington lost more battles than he won. But we won the war.
Yeah, but I think there were a couple of key points to Battle of Monmouth Courthouse. Was one, it was one of the first times our troops didn't leave the field. They actually quit.
Right.
Number two, the British is the ones who left the field. That's why we would consider
Excellent.
victory.
Excellent.
Both reasons for the battle. I think one of the also keys was court-martial of Lee.
Yeah. Well, Lee, you got to keep in mind, before this battle, Lee was of the opinion, because Washington used to counsel with his generals, get their advice, a lot of times he already made up his mind, but he had this democratic idea of having the generals feed into what the plan was gonna be. And Lee was against attacking the British and just allowing them to get where they wanted to go. And I guess he was in this sense of, well, we won't lose many men at all if we just pester them as on their way. And Lee was sort of playing that out in the battle, but Washington removed him, okay, and put Lafayette in charge. And then when Lee found out that Lafayette was in charge of this big advanced group, then Lee said, no, I want to lead that group. So he came back on the scene. What Washington should have done is stuck with Lafayette, but he didn't, okay? And so, you know, when we talk about a perfect battle and this and that, it was imperfect on both sides. And this is one of the mistakes that Washington made, was allowing Lee to come back into the picture as the guy who was going to lead that lead force and try to, you know, delay and get the British distracted so that the main force could come in.
I
So,
think one of Washington's biggest attributes, and it's not mentioned in history a lot, is the fact that Washington was a good political figure.
oh yeah,
He knew how to balance. He was much like Eisenhower in that he wasn't a great general, he was a great politician. He
right.
knew how to take everything that was around him and blend it. That's why some of the guys stuck around the way they did.
Right.
Gates should have been shot long before he.
And there were people in those days who said that Lee was the best general on the American side. And if you can imagine Lee instead of Washington and how Lee's nature of command would be compared to Washington's nature of command, we wouldn't have won the war.
No.
We wouldn't have won the war. And a lot of guys would have gone home. They wouldn't have fought at all.
Wasn't Gates was responsible for a lot of the losses in the South.
Yeah,
Matter of fact, it was that's how they lost. Was it Charleston?
yeah,
And why Washington sent Greene down to take over.
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a good general.
Yes.
Yeah, but keep in mind that in the losses and so forth, that lengthens the war.
Mhm.
And the actual lengthening of the war was to our advantage.
Right.
Because technically the British got tired of fighting.
Oh yeah.
And so time was on our side because we lengthened the time. Okay, instead of having a short war, which the British would have won, we had a long war and the Americans won.
Oh, but George Washington was the father of guerrilla warfare.
Mhm.
He was the first. I mean,
Yeah.
He knew that he strung it out long enough.
Yeah.
Because if you look at some
Wait
of the
a minute.
battles like Brandywine, he should have won Brandywine and he lost it because
Yeah.
he wasn't a great general.
And last point is this fighting against the British regulars. When he was fighting the Battle of Trenton, that was the Hessians.
Right.
Cornwallis, when he escaped at night, second Battle of Trenton, Cornwallis wasn't really into it. He was going to be ready the next day, but nothing happened. And then the Battle of Princeton, that was a subpar unit led by British colonels. So this was the first key one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
big key one.
Okay, that's it. If you have any questions for Charlie or me, we're ready to answer them. If not, the battle is
I have a
concluded.
question for Charlie. Charlie, do you, so you talked about plans for the 250th. Are you starting to talk about them or?
So the good news is that I left town right after.
Oh.
We did it, and within a year I moved to California. And then I moved back. So I think I'm part of the Historical Society. I wasn't part of the Kingston Historical Society for this. I was a separate person, and there were several folks, Doug Giowski and Robert von Zumbush, who were the Kingston people, and I wasn't being the Kingston people. I was being a coordinator. But I don't know what's going to happen with the big 250th. But I'm not in a position to find out. I mean, I will know as much as you do. In fact, probably less, because the library is considered to be a place that you go to find out what's going on in a town. So
Yeah. Charlie, is
We'll
the
all find
state giving any hints as to what they're planning?
I know nothing. I don't even know whether anybody who's on the call may
In
know.
other words, I'm wondering down if it's gonna be a trickle down effect or like you guys did where it's a grassroots thing.
I actually think that the grassroots thing
Yeah,
was a hoot and a half.
yeah.
It frustrated some folks because stuff was supposed to happen and then it didn't happen. It wasn't super well coordinated, but I don't know. Were you involved in several different things, George, or just the Kingston stuff? Because you were heavily involved in Kingston.
Pretty
stuff.
much just the Kingston stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. That was enough.
That was Rockingham and Kingston. It was
Yeah.
a combination.
Yeah, the breakfast tea and then the march into Kingston and then the dinner in the woods.
Yeah.
And then we had the museum in the firehouse.
Right.
So, yeah,
We
we had enough.
and some of them.
And a memorial thing at the cemetery with the
So
21
each-
gun salute 3 times.
Three
The
times?
militia did it, the Marine Corps
That's
Reserve did it, and the VFW did it.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So it looks like grassroots is the way to go.
I know the
I would hope
state
so.
is trying to push to have things done,
Right.
but I don't know how well they're pushing it.
Yeah.
What kind of
I just
guide?
I know their offices, but that's as far as I know.
Like they don't have a commission or anything like
Right.
that, or there's
But
nobody.
we gotta
telling
do
you.
something, and it's coming, and the only thing I can say is, this is 2024, and we're looking at 2028.
Yeah,
Sounds like a long
time's-
time.
That's gonna go
Sounds
quick.
like-
Not a long time.
They may be concentrating on the Princeton and Trenton thing, but so one interesting thing was in my travels, I ended up living in New Orleans for 2 years, and Mardi Gras is a super wonderful time, but nobody owns Mardi Gras. That's very important. The city of New Orleans can control what happens, and they have a couple of rules, like you can't throw live animals from floats.
What?
But it's
Who would do that?
well, there was a while when they were having people hand out kittens, and they just didn't like the idea.
Oh dear.
Anyway, but the city could make rules, but they couldn't say we want a parade now. Instead, the crews, which are the performing
The
folks,
tribes, yeah.
would make up their own parades as long as they obeyed the city's rules.
Or
And so there are like 40 different parades during Mardi Gras. One of the rules is you cannot show any sponsorship information. So it's not the Coca-Cola Endymion parade.
right.
You can't. In fact, you also can't show your face. So everyone has to wear a mask except for the marshal of each parade, but with a simple set of rules. Every parade is incredibly creative, whether their theme is butterflies or whether their theme is toilet plungers. They're all fascinating parades, and it's great fun. And in the same way, you don't expect Cranbury and Lambertville. I don't know. Every town has its own feeling, so you kind of expect we can expect a real variety of fun if we do it right.
Yeah.
Dayton, I don't know. The Dayton celebration.
Crossroads.
Crossroads.
Crossroads. Yes, Crossroads celebration.
Yeah, well, I think we're ready to coordinate. You know, from our perspective, we're ready to coordinate with you guys in Kingston, because you're part of the thing anyway. So we can expand it beyond Kingston to include all of South Brunswick. The thing is that you're like with this route, you're talking about other counties.
Well, that's the thing is that whereas the battles of Trenton and Princeton are all in
Mercer.
what turned into Mercer County.
Yeah,
This is 5 different counties or something like that.
yeah,
From Amwell to
That's right.
the
So,
battlefield.
yeah. I mean, if it's really gonna be organized, you need like an umbrella type of thing. And then you have the branches going off that, but that's a question of who's gonna do that.
And
And is it in the works and we don't know about it?
Yeah.
I guess the
Anyway,
best thing
I
to
I
do
guess
is
the
ask.
state tied into you,
Yeah.
right? You
Well, that's
guys
true.
came up with it, and
Bob
then the
Craig,
state said,
there were
oh, this is a good idea.
Yeah, they jumped on it.
Right.
Yeah, all
So
the politicians.
Putting the signs up was actually one of the simplest things. I ordered 200 of those things And I went along the street and said, would you like to put something in your front yard? George had one.
That's another question I
He
have.
wasn't gonna-
From that, have there been any push for permanent signs?
I know nothing.
You know, like, like a nice sign with a little information on it as to, like, Washington paid Thomas Wetherell here.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then, well, the
Yeah,
the Bungtown Road thing was interesting, because on 518, there's a connection that goes back to Rock Road,
Yeah,
and it says 100 yards from here, the Continental Army passed.
that's a metal sign. like-
Yeah, it's a big metal
Okay.
sign. That's
Yeah.
really good. And they did, that's one thing that did happen, was the state did come in and preserve the land where the Lambertville Water Company is.
Right.
So that ends up being, there's a trail.
Now, is that a
goes through
state sign that?
it. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be a county sign. Just
Could be a
easily,
county.
because
See,
it's-
that's the thing, like the signs in Kingston. And, I hate to say it, but when you're coming from Princeton over the bridge and you see that Kingston sign, who made that? Was it done by a third grader?
I don't know who made that. Welcome
It was a
to
long time ago.
Settled 1675.
I'm just saying that Kingston deserves a classier sign than
But
that.
there was a sign
It's
for
my
the cemetery,
political
which is
opinion.
gone now.
I'm just, it was all well and good, well intentioned.
Right.
But it looked like it came from somebody's wood shop.
There.
But there was a sign at one time.
and it
a few
probably
years
did.
ago. It's
Could
not
be,
there
I
anymore.
don't know.
The one that before
Coming across
the George Road.
competition.
That's right.
But like,
George.
you know,
Yeah,
how
something
can we
classy.
kind of,
Coming up that hill.
some signs, I
Yeah.
know Judy tells me there's
Just,
a sign by five.
you can tell, you can put my name on that. I'm concerned, it's a concern. And then for the Revolutionary War signs and all that.
Good
But
luck.
there's talk, but there's politics.
We're talking about signs.
That one
Oh.
sign you were talking
Yeah,
about
where's that?
was given by Franklin Township. And the sun just wore it away where you couldn't read it anymore,
wow.
so
It turned
the
white.
church took it down. Because you couldn't read it, it just was a,
But there was a sign on Ridge Road by Five Corners. And that I used to pass every day, and it said George Washington came through here on the way to the Battle of Monmouth. There was another sign in Lambertville saying that they came up this particular street on the way to the battle. Yeah, so I don't know if they're
There were metal signs.
metal signs.
There were metal signs and they had red in them and there was.
You're
Yeah,
talking
I can
past
remember that.
tense, is the sign at
I
Five
don't-
Corners
No.
there?
I don't know.
No,
those-
they're not there.
Okay.
How can somebody put up a sign that is a permanent fixture telling the history of that location and then take down the sign?
Well, there
Why?
was,
That's the same question as why is the Wetherell House closed and the public can't go to it?
there was this thing called snowplows that are
Is
very
that what
good at
happened?
taking down signs.
no, I think sometimes the
So,
signs
no
just
problem,
get old,
okay.
because there was one at the corner of Heathcote that used to say diagonally across was Withington's Hotel.
Right.
Oh,
And that's how we know it's what's now PJ's, that was Withington's Hotel, we know that.
But there's
Not
no
Withington,
sign.
I'm sorry, Van Tilburg.
Van Tilburg, right,
Tilburg,
the guy I
Van Tilburg's
mentioned,
Hotel.
yeah, he was
And there was a
sign.
big state sign,
Yeah.
and I think the state, when they redo signs, they eventually took that down because they widened the road as much as they can
And
widen
they
it without
didn't
going
put
up
up
to
a sign,
somebody's
and they didn't
porch.
put up a sign.
And now there's no room for a sign.
About
Because
what year was it when they took it down, do you think?
Way before me, we only knew that it was there because some of the older folks in town at the time said there used to be a sign. And then we got a great picture of Withington's, the Union Line Hotel. And in the background, you could see the sign. And when you blow it up, you say, oh yeah, that's the sign that all these old timers that are now deceased were talking about.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think what happened is they widened Route 27, they keep widening it to the point where they can't widen it anymore, but now there's no room to put a sign because it would be in somebody's porch.
Yeah.
Well, we have time now before the 250th, so how can we kind of as a group here, get involved with,
Getting some signs.
yes, getting some
Right, well, the
signage.
first thing is to inquire. Randy and I, now there's the Preservation Society. Okay, all parts of South Brunswick are involved in the Preservation Society. And when I attended those meetings before COVID hit, I brought that thing up about signs. And they're key to where the preservation sites are. And so and they give credence to, that's where a sign should be. Once they say this is a preservation site. So that we have to work with them, that's one thing. So we'll be asking again, the municipal people, Public Works, whatever the case may be, we have to ask. You have tombstones in the warehouse in South Brunswick, Public Works. They don't see the light of day. They have historical significance, great historical significance, and they're hidden away in a shed. And nobody can see them. And Randy and I keep saying, we're gonna set up this historic trail around the back of the library, and we're gonna put those stones there, okay?
Well, actually, it was, the director said that was a possibility, but everything is so held up with the construction
It's
now.
a bureaucratic possibility.
Right, and so I haven't been able to ask about it because there are like bigger things that are going on with
Yeah.
the construction. But we got pretty far with that though.
Another one from Greekstown Causeway.
There's a lot
Well, I'm
of
happy
messages.
to take an active role
Well,
in trying
this-
to.
Mark Nonestead, how do you say his name? Is anybody Nonestead? Do you know
Who is
this?
that?
He's from the Middlesex County Cultural and Heritage Commission.
Indian guy, Namaste?
No, not Nonestead,
Guy.
Nonestead.
Steve.
Yeah,
Is he
yeah.
From East Brunswick?
He's from, I don't know where he's from, but he's from the Middlesex County
Right,
Arts and History
right.
Commission. He's the head of it. He would be a person to talk to you about signs, because I remember talking about this years ago, and we kind of had the idea, but his name came up. But I can start with him to ask these
Well,
questions.
we have to ask, and anybody can ask. If you can make contact with these people and say, you're a voice representing blah, blah, blah. And just ask and then give us feedback on it. And but something has to happen where if we're gonna do this road to Monmouth again, and we will, then we gotta get the signs thing in there too.
Yeah.
So we
I
think
that's
signs
the
is,
first thing.
signs are the next
Yeah,
step.
because
like
the
that.
signs are lasting, so they fill in all the years before and after the
What about
That's
the
what
celebration.
you're talking about, Road to Monmouth.
To this
We have
area.
activity on 27.
That
Yeah.
that's the Atlantic.
1776.
Question.
Here in the town.
The thing is, that you
Used to have
only get to ask-
signage too.
you only get to ask these questions once.
Mhm.
It's like, if 20 people ask at 20 different
Yeah, I
times
think
for
we should
20
start.
different
I
things,
think
then
we should
nothing
start
happens.
here.
Maybe we
And
should.
the trick
always
is to
say
make
what
sure that-
everybody's talking
that-
about.
That there's something consistent that gets asked for.
Yeah,
And some of that is that the ones who want to ask early have to wait and get allies. Because if you want to do the road from Rocky Hill to Cranbury,
right.
then you need to make sure that the Cranbury folks are in on it.
Right.
And the folks at Rocky
Right.
Hill and the folks in Franklin
That's why you
Township.
need an umbrella.
And then you say, look, we've had these 5 organizations all say, it's time that we get some sort of labeling for this, and this is what we're proposing, and then the state
Right.
does something, but you can't, the fracture of going between counties, the fracture of going between townships
Yeah.
is really quite, you need to have a consistent voice that sounds like a lot of people are interested in that.
Right.
And that was the reason for the temporary signs was, let's just get people so that they say, hey, look, this road was the route of the Continental Army. Hey, look,
Right.
we need something better for this.
What
But you
about
need
our
to
state,
start.
what about our state representative?
Which one?
Yeah, that's it. Who is he and what is he doing?
No. It's the thing is, like, Kingston is the great thing because it's in 3 different counties.
I'm
Right,
not
that's
talking, I'm
so
not
it's
talking
like-
about them. What about the one for South Brunswick in this area? And what about the one for the next area? You got elections coming up.
Yeah.
November is around the corner. There's how many voters here?
Well, they're aware though, the state, the representative for,
no,
this
we're
area.
aware that the state representative doesn't do anything. That's what we're aware of.
No, but
The idea is, and if you really want to get this thing going, is that you got a voting block here in the township. The voting block wants to do something. Okay, it's kind of funny that when the voters want to do something, people who are registered, who actually go to the polls, who actually make sure that he gets elected to get paid, that if we actually put some pressure on them, that they would actually do something. It's the only time they'll do something because it's an election coming up. But what I'm saying is that we're gonna do all of these societies, and these societies are nice, but these are guys who've got the pocketbook. These are the guys,
Money for the signs.
Right, money for
Okay.
the sign.
But
Why-
our representative
Why don't
though.
we do this? For our June meeting,
Mhm.
or our July meeting, let's see if we can find the highest person on the ladder who can come to the meeting and talk to us.
Okay, that's a good plan, but they're aware of what we do. I got a proclamation or something from the New Jersey. It's a legislative. It was something from the state, and it was an official document. It said they wanted to recognize us, the South Brunswick Historical Society, for putting together the scavenger hunt. I'm like, who found out? So somebody knew. I have it at home because I didn't have a place to put it. I had an iron. It got
Did it
crumpled
have
when
a
it came.
signature on it?
Yeah, I have all the information.
Okay, good, then
It's
we
got a
wanna
seal, too.
recognize
It's
that
got a
person who
seal.
signed
It's
it.
gotta be good.
And
It's got a
invite
seal.
them to our meeting, so we can honor them for their great achievement of recognizing
remember-
us.
They even knew about the birthday cake we had for the
There you
yeah.
go.
So there is somebody, and I'll bring it in so I can show everybody. I'll send it out. I have it on a
I've
PDF.
saved a piece, it's in my refrigerator.
So I'll send it out to everyone. Then we can start there because someone is aware on the local level. So
Okay, we have to find that someone, invite him to a meeting.
yeah.
Okay. Ooh. There we go.
And start with the signs.
Okay. Thanks for coming out, everybody, and good night. And to be
Charlie, great
continued.
job.
To be continued.
Oh.
Mr. George Lusk.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, sir. Do you have any more names for me to find?
I don't at the present.